everybody, it's me, Nina. I haven't made a video for you guys in a few days, and I thought might be a good day to do that. Make a little video, let you guys know what's been going on with us. Absolutely nothing. We haven't been doing anything. We have been lazy around here, and that's okay. It's winter, right? I've been reading. That's why I probably look really tired. Sometimes when I read a book, it just makes me just want to go to sleep, and sometimes I do go to sleep. So I thought, well, I had some supper dishes to do, and thought that I would just chit chat with you guys as I do them. Several of you guys commented that you really like when I do that. So I thought, well, it gets me something to do, and if it gives you something to listen to. I also had people asking about the new light, and boy, is it great. It is bright. It's a great light. We fixed dinner today, and I was telling Steve, I said, boy, that makes a big difference. It just, brightens everything up. Got a bunch of eggs sitting here. We got 4 cartons we've got to wash. And Mom's wanting a couple. And then Steve took 2 cartons to our pastor and his wife last night. So that's nice. They really enjoy the eggs. They eat a lot of eggs, so I was thinking about a story that I could tell you. And I used to work, and I don't believe I've ever said anything about this job. If I have, forgive me. But I used to work at a assisted living place, and I was the housekeeper. There were, let's see, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Must have been 25 rooms in that place. And every day, Monday through Friday, I spent an hour in 5 different rooms. So that was a total of 5 hours that I worked Monday through Friday. So it was, a little bit more than a part-time job, but not quite a full-time job. And it was, it fit my needs perfectly. That's when I had children at home and all that. So I was thinking about some of the older people that lived there. Even though this was an assisted living home, didn't really mean that all they needed was just a little assistance. All of these apartments, or suites, I think is what they called them, all of the apartments they were one big room, and in the room they had an area for their bed, an area for their couch and TV and stuff, and then they had a little spot where a dinette could sit. And the kitchen area just had the stove, refrigerator, and a sink, and it was very small. Then they had their own bathrooms, and that's what each of the suites ended up being like. Some of them were larger, and some of them were quite small. And of course, they charged by, if it was a large room or a small room, they charged by that. Very expensive. I could not believe the pricing on those places. But I got really, really close to a lot of these elderly people. Cleaning up sweeping the carpets, mopping the floors. In the bathroom, I did everything. The toilet and tub and sink, and any of the dusting of the walls and stuff like that. In the bedroom, all I did was dust furniture and sweep the carpets. Through the living room area and the dinettes and all that, I just wiped everything off, swept carpets, cleaned the inside of the windows if they needed it. And then the kitchen area, I would do the dishes if they had any, which most of them didn't have. They didn't actually cook. Actually, all the stoves in all of this building were shut off, afraid of what they could do, start a fire or something. So I would just make sure everything was wiped down, the floors were swept and mopped, and that took an hour, a good hour. And some of them, like many, she would want me to do certain jobs for her. She didn't trust some of the people that worked there, and she didn't really have much good to say about a lot of them. And I have to say that I agreed with her. A lot of them had her, even if it wasn't her day to have her room cleaned, and stay a few minutes. I would take a break with her so that we could chit chat, and it made her feel, she was lonely. It made her feel loved. So her room was super easy to clean except for one thing. Minnie loved her powder. And she had those, those round powder things with a puff thing on them. She had one of those, and she had shelves on the back of the toilet. And she, oh my goodness, she would powder down, and she couldn't hardly see. So the bathroom was covered every time I went in there, regardless if I was just going in to check on things or, it would be covered in powder. But powder's a whole lot better to clean up than something else that one of the other ones did. This other lady named Helen was not one of my favorite people. There was 2 people out of the 25 that lived in that building. 2 of them were not my favorite people. One was an old man and one was an old woman, and her name was Helen. And Helen had birds. She had 2 parakeets, which I love animals and birds and everything. But she didn't know how to take care of them. She couldn't even hardly get up and walk without her walker, and she would be all over the place. Well, I come to find out that Helen was doing a little bit of drinking when she was in her room by herself. One of her children or grandchildren, I have no idea, would bring her bottles of wine. And I started noticing because they told me to start looking like underneath sinks, and because some of them were getting really bad dementia, they would hide things and you'd be smelling something and you wonder what it is. And so I had to start going through, at least pulling drawers open, dresser drawers, chest of drawers. I didn't have to go, shuffling through, but to at least pull them open, make sure that there was nothing that had an odor in them. And so I seen all these wine bottles underneath her. They had been there. She had been drinking apparently quite a bit. So what I did was I threw away all the empties and the ones that had just a little bit in them. I just went ahead and dumped them and I threw them away. And the ones that, of course, were full or just had a little bit out of them, I, of course, left all those. Because, they paid a lot of money to live there. They were allowed to drink if they wanted. Well, that's what she was doing. Helen was she was getting drunk. She would sit and watch those cooking shows. And once we figured all that out, it made perfect sense. I often wondered, because Helen was an okay lady, but when she was drinking and her bowels would have to go, she never once made it in the toilet. Never. It was always a pile on the floor by the toilet. And I would say, Helen, I know, I understand you've got an issue and, you drink a lot. But if you know that you have to go to the potty, you need to be able to set your bottom on the toilet. Don't, go sideways or however she was doing it. I don't know. But I got so tired, and it probably sounds horrible, but I got so tired of cleaning up her crap. It was awful. And the smell, and she was a large woman and she didn't eat just a little bit. So she had big piles of crap. And the girls that were taking care of them, they didn't have to clean that up. So they would call for me. So especially at the end before she ended up being moved out of that assisted living home, it was constant. It was more than once a day in the 5 hours that I was there that I would have to go clean the toilet and the floor and just everything. It was awful, awful. And the old man that I had, I can't remember his name. Paul. His name was Paul. He was probably the foulest trashy old man that I had ever met. Paul could not walk very well at all. Used a walker like, most of them do. And he was a large and tall, big man. And Paul knew that I was a Christian, had never asked me, had never said a word to me about church or anything. But he apparently knew, maybe someone told him, maybe my mom had told him, I don't know. But he would talk trash anytime I was in his room. First off, he never cleaned up anything. He was I don't know if he was a hoarder or if he was just nasty, but his room always stunk. His room always had newspapers thrown everywhere. It was horrible. He did cook in his room. They had his stove turned off, but he would order stuff off of TV all the time. He had ordered one of those chicken roaster things, whatever they're called, to roast chicken, I believe. He had like other types of toaster ovens he could use, and he would use them all. And of course, nobody cleaned them up. So when my day was, to clean his room, that was all left for me. And I didn't have time to do a lot of good cleaning in his room because I had to spend so much time in his kitchen area. And it was disgusting. So I would go about as quickly as I could to pick up all the newspapers and everything. And then he would yell and he wouldn't want them thrown away. And, so I would have to make a pile over by the windowsill. And, I wouldn't ever get snotty or nothing with him at all. I'm going to talk about that with one of my sweethearts that I just loved being around. About stabbed myself with a knife there, didn't I? Her name was Grace. And Grace was turning 100 years old. And she still walked, still was in her right mind, took care of herself, showered herself, did everything herself except she was going blind. She could make it to the dining room. She could do all that stuff herself. But she could feed herself, but she just could not do anything as far as cooking or that type of thing because she couldn't see. And she had never had children. She had wanted children so bad and never had any. And the only family member that she had left was a niece that was her husband's on his side. And she was the only woman that Grace still had living, a relative living. And that lady would come in once or twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week, checking on her. She was very, very good to Grace and took a lot of good care of her. But Grace and Grace was excited to be turning 100 because she was going to get a birthday card from the president. So that was the big thing for her. She was excited about that. So, yes, Grace was my special one. She is actually the only one that I attended her funeral. And I never got anything. I did have somebody give me a $5 bill. You weren't allowed to take money, but somebody actually sent it to the office and my name was on it and they had to give it to me. It was a $5 bill and it was so precious, and they knew that they weren't allowed to give me money, so that's what they chose to do. But anyway, so when Grace passed away, it still gets to me. Right before she died, her mind just started going. I mean, within the same day. And my mom was working that night, and Grace was behind her door, and she was hollering for me. And so Mom called me at home, and I went and visited with her, and she ended up passing away that night. So, all right, that one's a little sad one. I should have started with that and let off with one of the funnier ones, right? But anyway, I just wanted to kind of give you guys an update as I was getting my kitchen cleaned up. And